good afternoon and welcome to Seattle's Eastside Real Estate Podcast. This is your go-to source for all things living, working, playing on the East Side. Today is Wednesday, March 22nd, and we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Feel free to like, share, comment on our live feed. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have during the show. If you're listening to this on pre-recorded a podcast or on YouTube, please do subscribe. And feel free to comment there as well on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. I think there's a few others. We are glad you're here. We hope to have a great show for you today. We're going to be, of course, welcoming our mortgage specialist, Tucker Maxwell of Guild Mortgage Company. And then we're also going to have Elisa Howard of College Insights. And we're going to be talking about student loan forgiveness and how to have a plan for that. So I'm looking forward to some great conversations. But before we get to our guests, of course, we've got our Real Talk segment. So what is ahead for home prices in 2023? This last week, I had the opportunity to speak with one of our local news organizations, King 5, and we were talking about some of the challenges that they're having on the East Side with with unemployment. And yesterday, Amazon just announced an additional 9,000 layoffs. And so with our tech industry getting hit so hard, there's a lot of concern that home prices are going to start sliding. And I have to tell you that it's an interesting market. And my comment was, this is the most mixed market I've ever seen. We actually just today, and Tucker will speak to this, saw interest rates drop a little bit. That follows a trend for the last couple of weeks where it's going to be bringing more buyers back to the market. And inventory has also not kept pace with what we need. So a lot of folks are saying, well, home prices are falling. And then unfortunately, the headlines are home prices are falling. But the actual feeling in the market is that home prices are steady. So yes, over our peak, which was the end of the first quarter in 2023 and the beginning of second quarter, so March, April, May, we saw a tremendous softening in demand, which basically was caused by interest rates going from the high threes all the way up into the sixes. Of course, that had a dramatic effect on the multiple offer situations that we were facing in the first quarter. So looking forward, home prices is more like looking back, but looking further back. And what I mean by that is that you need to take, and if you can, go look at historical evidence. If you're a seller and you're working with an agent, look at historical evidence from the third and maybe part of the fourth quarter of 2021, right? So look at those timelines and see what home prices in your neighborhood were doing. If you're a buyer, understand that the price of the home that you purchase is going to be dictated by the level of interest, not necessarily by what you saw 6 months ago, 3 months ago, or even a year ago, or even a year and a half ago. If you have a home that is completely updated, needs no work, is in a good school district on the East Side, and there aren't very many like it, the chances are it will get bid up. That's where we stand right now. So that bodes well for home prices rising, and it may add to some frustration, some mixed feelings that buyers have. Now, for sellers to look at it this way is to understand that if you do price it right and have a good strategy for marketing that home, you should be able to put your home in a situation where you get to pick a good, strong offer or two, or maybe three. Well, you have to pick one, but you can pick from several offers, but don't expect multiple offers. Just kind of, well, it's really tough to say, but you just have to kind of pay attention to what the market is telling you once the house hits the market. So long story short, there's two things that homeowners and would-be homeowners need to be considering. Is that a home is a place to live, and oftentimes we get caught up in the home is an investment. So home is a place to live, and one of the cool things about that is you can live in a home, you can pay a mortgage payment and gain equity all at the same time. So the power of a tax deduction. So the power of home ownership is such that the average net worth of a homeowner is 43 times that of a renter. So If you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for the market to change in one way or the other, you may have to wait. But if you need a place to live and you can qualify, I highly encourage you to sit down with our mortgage professional, Tucker, and review your options. So that is our Real Talk segment. I kind of feel like our Real Talk segment is a little redundant, but there's a lot of clarity needed in this market. So we're trying to stay focused on that. Now, we have going to have a short commercial break, and we will be welcoming back our mortgage specialist, Tucker Maxwell from Guild Mortgage. Come right back after this short break.
Tired of the same old conversations at networking events that never lead to new clients? BNI is changing the way the world does business by connecting you to strategic relationships that can help you grow your business. BNI is the world's largest networking organization, helping hundreds of thousands of members around the world each year increase revenue through relationship marketing. For information about visiting a BNI chapter near you, go to the BNI Northwest website at bninw.com.
All right, welcome back to the show. Joining us here in 1 second, let's see, there you are, is Tucker Maxwell. And Tucker is a senior loan officer with Guild Mortgage. That's a mortgage banker, correct, Tucker? Mortgage
Correct. Yep.
Banker. To add a little something, what did I get right? Any comments on my opening Real Talk segment?
No, I think you nailed it. I think the important thing to mention is that the Fed did raise the rate today, but home loan rates did drop.
Yeah, that's always the big confusion. People, they raised the rate, so my rates will drop or will rise, and that's it. And we've talked before on the show, so I won't rehash it. But go back and watch one of our past podcasts to see it really is about the intention of fighting inflation. So let's talk about down payments today. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about what is needed for down payment for a home. I remember way back in the day when I bought my first home, I thought it was pretty like, where was I going to come up with all this money? Only to find out I didn't need as much as I thought I did. And it was hard. I had to save up for it, but it was well worth it. So as you're consulting the public here today, what is the minimum down payment to buy a home in Washington?
Yeah, so it depends on the loan type that the borrower is looking at utilizing. So there's multiple options or multiple answers to this question, but on a conventional mortgage today, you can get in with as little as 3% down, and on an FHA loan, 3.5% down. But the other really cool thing in Washington is we have great down payment assistance programs that cover the full need for a down payment. And so a buyer today could get into a home with just covering a portion of the closing costs and no portion of their down payment.
Wow. So that's obviously for people that qualify, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty generous qualifications, though.
And I also don't want to forget to mention that a VA qualified borrower puts zero down. So if you are a veteran, you have a certification to utilize that program. And essentially you're just paying some closing costs, right? As a veteran.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So still served in the military, currently serving in the military.
Yep. Honorably discharged or actively serving, and their family.
So tell me more about that. We should actually do a segment more on VA loans, but so they can actually help their family qualify?
Yeah. So think of like a surviving spouse. Yeah. They get the same benefits.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're talking, so it sounds like there's some options for down payment, but why should somebody buy now versus waiting until they have 20%?
Yeah, so I think the common myth is that we should avoid mortgage insurance, right? Like if you can't put 20% down, there's going to be this big, scary mortgage insurance premium that's included in your payment. And if you can't put 20% down, you shouldn't do it. And in reality, that's a moving target. You know, you talked about this in your Real Talk segment about the price of homes. And if we have somebody that's looking to save 20% and determining how long it may take for them to get there, home prices are going to continue to escalate, right? Average appreciation, 3 to 5, maybe 6% every year. That 20% number that they're aiming for is going to continue to grow. So if it's a moving target, will they ever get there? And then to answer the question about mortgage insurance is, you know, it's really not as scary as it once was. And if we can secure a lower price today with less out of pocket, paying mortgage insurance may be less than waiting and buying at a future market.
Yeah, see, it's interesting because our market here in the Pacific Northwest, or at least in the greater Puget Sound area, is a lot about appreciation and not as much about cash flow. And I say that as a investment strategy, but I have helped a lot of people that made really pretty good money, and specifically your example of the down payment assistance, they made in that threshold. Do you remember what the qualifications, income qualifications you have to have? It's above a certain amount, but below another certain amount.
Yeah, it's below $180,000 right now.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's actually great. So if you make less than $180,000, you can qualify for, what is it, a $40,000 bond?
It's up to 4% of the purchase price.
Up to 4% of the purchase price. We
Yeah.
got to see some numbers on that. That's actually pretty great. So essentially, whatever it is, it's up to 4% of the purchase price. So whatever you would qualify in that rate, we have to see some math on that maybe sometime. Maybe next week, bring us the math on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the cool thing about it is too, with those programs, they only require a 3 or 3.5% down payment, depending on if you go conventional or FHA. So there's even some money left over to cover a portion of the closing costs. Now, if they work with you and you negotiate in some seller paid closing costs, you could literally get into a home with maybe the first payment out of pocket.
Right. That's actually pretty cool because the market's a little softer. We may be able to, and actually we just did last week, we negotiated $10,000 in closing costs on a purchase. So even though, as I said, it's a hot market, if a home's on the market for a couple of weeks, you can get some closing costs paid for. So, well, at least excellent negotiators like myself can help you.
Exactly.
Okay, so
add it in too, right? Increase the price by 10,000 and ask for 10,000 back. Proceed remains the same for the seller. So there's ways by working with you that you can work it in, even in some perceived hotter home or one with multiple offers.
Yeah, and if people are out there thinking, well, I should wait now versus buying later, what is the cost associated with that?
Yeah, so one, you're foregoing the appreciation that you're going to get by buying today versus however long it takes you to wait. So 4%. So if you wait, you're foregoing that appreciation. You're also paying rent. So let's just assume, let's say $3,000 a month. That's $36,000 right there if you wait a year. You're also not going to get the tax incentives by buying a home. So you're going to lessen your tax burden by paying interest and writing off some of the expenses of home ownership. So there's a lot of advantages that add up to significant savings by buying a home now versus waiting into the future. And I'll send you after this, Dan, a calculator that you can share with people that allows them to do that math and say, okay, what am I waiting for? Am I waiting for a certain rate? Okay, what rate am I waiting for? And how long do I expect it to take to get there, which who knows? And it calculates that out based on how much they pay in rent. And what's the average rent in Seattle right now?
Oh, I'm over $2,500 for anything decent.
Exactly.
Easy. Yeah. So. Wow. Okay. So the last thing we did talk about earlier was private mortgage insurance. First off, explain what it is, and then tell me why we should or shouldn't try to avoid it.
Yep. So mortgage insurance, and it's mortgage insurance on FHA loans, private mortgage insurance on conventional mortgage. It allows us as the lender to pass some of the default risk to an insurance provider. So we're saying, hey, Fannie Mae is only going to take on so much risk, and this insurance company is going to cover a portion of the default risk as well. So it helps when somebody puts less than 20% down, us to offer them home loans without just having enormous risk of default. And so you carry mortgage insurance until you have 20% equity in the property. So if you put 3% down or 5% down, 10% down, you're going to have mortgage insurance. And then as you make payments and you get to that 20% threshold, it would fall off. The really cool thing about mortgage insurance is it's now risk-based. And so we're going to look at the borrower's qualifications, credit score. Is there one borrower versus two? What is their overall debt to income ratio? And the mortgage insurance speaks specifically to the risk that they present for default, not just this overarching cost for everybody. And so if they're a good credit score, there's two borrowers. So if one loses their job, the other one still can cover the mortgage, things like that. That mortgage insurance premium is much less. And so we're talking, less than $100 in some situations for mortgage insurance.
Wow, that's cool. That's based. So it's a combination of the fact that you're not 20% leveraged or whatever it is, 80% leveraged, and the qualifications of the individual. So exactly. It can be less if you're a better, less of a credit risk. That's awesome.
Yep. Pretty cool.
Well, cool. So we learned a lot of great things today, Tucker. Thanks for bringing some great information. As you guys know, you can always reach Tucker at his phone number, 425-757-9202. You can reach out to the Eastside Real Estate team and we'll get you connected. I got to say, if you're out there making $150,000 and you are renting, we should talk because we can get you into something and maybe you haven't saved up a dime and we've got options. So we'd love to be able to help you through that. Tucker, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan.
All right. We're going to have another short commercial break and we'll be welcoming back Alicia Howard of College Insights. Don't miss this segment. We're going to be discussing the strains of college loans and what new policies mean for you.
The pest stops here. Green City Pest Control is your full-service pest solution for all your pest control needs. With an owner with 32 years experience, a board-certified entomologist, and rodent specialist, we do it all. Bats to rats, crawl space, or attic. Call us and we will resolve your problem. 425-413-9700.
Welcome back to the show. Joining me now is Alicia Howard, and she is the founder and CEO of College Insights. It is a private college counseling company based out of the greater Seattle area, but works with families across the country. She has a master's in education, specializing in education policy, is a certified college counselor, and is the only certified financial aid advisor in Washington State. She has been in education for almost 20 years and has worked in college admissions for 10. What does that mean? Certified college counselors, well, they help students get into college. Certified financial aid advisors help students and families pay for college. These are two completely different areas of expertise, yet Alicia is equally strong in both, which is what separates her from all the other riffraff out there. She has been featured in a number of news outlets and podcasts and is frequently invited to speak at high schools, community organizations, and businesses throughout the U.S. And we asked her to come on our humble little podcast. Thanks for joining us today, Elisa.
Yes, thank you for having me today.
So we're going to talk about the student loan situation. And I got to say, this is an area that I haven't dug too much into. But, I've talked to a few people that are struggling because they have the student loans. And there's been this kind of uncertainty over what's going on with forgiveness and that. So, which is probably why we're seeing it featured in the news. So how did it all get to this point?
Yes. So we talk about the student loan bubble, and the bubble burst. Like, it bursted 10 years ago, right? So that bursted a lot, is way gone. The reason it's in the news is because, well, those of us who are in the industry knew this was going to be a problem like 15 years ago. But finally, Congress and the Department of Education realized that there were some major holes in these policies. And a couple of years ago, when people went to apply for their forgiveness, 95% of the applications got rejected, which was a major problem, right? People were pretty mad about that, thinking they had followed the rules, and their student loan servicers just gave really bad advice. And there were holes to begin with. And so that is when we have two sides. So we have the Supreme Court, which is right now the Biden forgiveness, which is either the $10,000 or $20,000 in loans. That's being held up in the courts. There's some other stuff being held up in the courts as well. But the Department of Education, which is who services loans, basically, they have announced their own stuff that's going to be changing in July. And that really was just the holes that had to be filled, again, that I saw coming 15 years ago. And they finally announced, hey, yeah, we realized that there were issues when these policies came out. We're just going to fill the gaps that needed to be filled in the first place.
So, Elisa, I want to go back to the beginning of this, because you said it burst 10 years ago. What was the bubble and what burst in it? Because I got to say, I wasn't paying attention to higher education 10 years ago. So if you can kind of go back to that so I can better understand how it burst.
Yeah, I mean, it's been coming on for a very long time, but really when it started bursting, I would say 2008. Other academics would, debate with me on that, whatever, around that time. So what we had inflation was sitting around 3%, right, for the last, whatever, 30, 40 years, whatever it was. And the cost of college was going up by 6%. And that was happening for like 25 years. So college was doubling inflation for many, many, many years. And all of a sudden, right, 2008 hit and this recession hit. And you had all these people graduating from college who couldn't get jobs. And the cost of education by this point when you look at the charts from it back then, it's insane. Like even from what my professors could pay, even adjusted for inflation to what we were paying, it was just astronomical. Like there's no way a normal person could have paid for that. Right. And so people couldn't pay their loans. Right.
So essentially if I can follow this, is what happened is the cost of tuition went up. The loans came along. People needed the schooling because they needed to be educated. When they finished their schooling, the job market fell apart. And then they're sitting there with a bunch of loans and a degree that doesn't get them the job that they need. And, that whole kind of challenge of now what do we do? And so now where we find ourselves is there's a couple of different programs, and the debt forgiveness one, I didn't hear about this one where 95 people got rejected, but that was a policy that these loan servicers put out there, said, hey, apply for this and we'll consider it. Is that what it was?
No. So back in, I want to say 2010. So the bubble burst, right? 2008, gotcha. 2009. And then they're like, oh, we should fix this because people don't have jobs and have to repay these loans. So that was under Obama, and they had come out with these new types of repayment options. And they said, if you follow XYZ policies, you can apply for forgiveness down the road of your loans. And people didn't understand it back then because they weren't clear policies and they were changing a lot. And student loan servicers basically don't know what they're talking about ever. And so here it came when it was time to apply. And 95% of the applications got rejected. And for all kinds of dumb reasons that didn't make sense in the first place. But now there's an uproar, right? Because people were like, I did what you told me to do. I filed my taxes the way you told me to. I did my paperwork like I was told to. Like, why is this not getting forgiven? And that's where, the Department of Education was like, oh, there's problems in these policies that were very obvious 15 years ago, but they were like, we need to do something about that. And now those changes are in the process of happening. Basically.
So, and those are happening in July. And what are they?
So there's a few from the Department of Education standpoint. So they're closing some of the holes. For instance, a big one is that so forgiveness works over a period of time. It's by number of payments. And so they had a rule that if you consolidated your loan, you no longer got that forgiveness. So for example, I just had a client about a month ago who she already had 10 years worth of forgiveness. And so she would have qualified in within a few years in her situation, but she'd consolidated back in November before talking to me, which means she lost 10 years towards her forgiveness.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what the student loan company told her to do. And really, you're like, that's dumb. Like, why does it matter it's the same lender? It's like it would be like switching from Wells Fargo and refinancing with Wells Fargo. Like, why would I lose all the payments I previously made?
And because of that consolidation, so she must have had a couple of student loans, and by putting them together into one, it terminated that pre-existing condition that she could have used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was a lot. In her case, it was like $50,000 of forgiveness she lost.
So with these new changes, and being that you're in your position, I mean, we've talked about students getting into college, but this is for individuals that have completed college, are in the workforce, and are struggling, to get these things paid off. And one of the things I didn't mention while we were talking with Tucker is they have to consider your monthly payments to student loans, and that is against your debt to income ratio, which means you would qualify for less if you have a monthly payment for these student loans. So first off, in order for somebody to qualify for a loan, you have to be in good standing, right? So there's that. But is there a way to help mitigate their challenges and then still be able to take advantage of the credit out there for buying a home?
Yes. So I get this a lot from people. So one of the policy changes they're going to be making in July as well is that the people who had older loans when these new policies came into effect. So think of people who graduated like 80s, 90s, early 2000s, right? Who hadn't paid their loans off yet. They're going to do an automatic, I don't want to say wipeout because there is paperwork involved, but basically if you have loans that are old, right, like they're 20 years old and you've been paying on them, those get to go away now in July. And so a lot of people who, maybe couldn't have qualified or are homeowners, but they want to get a better house or these kinds of things. Now those loans, like I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day who has like $60,000 left from law school, but like in a couple of years, that $60,000 is going to go away. And so now that falls off of his debt to income ratio, right? And now he can qualify for more of a mortgage.
Do you think it will show up as a bad credit hit?
Nope. It's not like a bankruptcy. It's not negative. It's just a forgiveness. So it basically will show that it was paid in full, really, on your credit.
Okay. So for people who are unsure what to do next, what do you recommend? And this, again, we're talking about people that have completed school that have outstanding student loans.
Yes. So I would say call me. But the big thing is if you have to be very careful in what paperwork you're doing. The situation is very complicated in how the policies have been written, because unfortunately there's this gap between paperwork has to be filed by May 1st, but the official policies and how they're going to be implemented don't happen till July. So we're having to make decisions without complete information. But it took me and a student loan attorney over 2 hours to sift through all the Department of Education paperwork and policies, and a lot of them were conflicting. And I was like, if it takes me and a student loan attorney 2 hours to figure this out, right? Like how is the average person going to know what to do? I mean, even I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do over here? So the big one, though, is for people with older loans. Generally, they're old, like FFEL loans, which is a different type of loan. Those need to be consolidated before May 1st because
you said not to consolidate loans.
Now they're changing it, though. In July, they're not going to count that anymore. And so if you have old loans and they need to be direct loans to be forgiven, you need to consolidate them because they're going to do a one-time adjustment. So they're going to do that in July. So they're going to do a one-time adjustment. So if you're one of these people with, 10 years, 15 years on your loans and you consolidate them, now it doesn't hurt you anymore. That's not going to hurt you. So you got to do it before May 1st. Then in July, when they do all these recounts and stuff, they're going to count those payments that you've been making all this time.
I see. So if you were to guess on what the Supreme Court does with the Biden stuff, what would they do? What do you think?
I say it's 50-50 at this point.
Yeah.
I could speculate, but there's so many political things involved in that. And so I'm telling people, like, don't count on that. And honestly, it can hurt you. It's actually easier to get larger debt forgiven than smaller debt forgiven. So there's some people, we run the numbers and I'm like, it didn't even make sense for you to apply for that. Like you would have gotten more forgiven if you didn't get that forgiveness. Yeah. So.
Well, and, as I think about kind of the future landscape for schools, I remember hearing them talking about increases in tuition at the University of Washington and all that stuff. And I'm putting 2 kids through school right now. And, we were very price conscious, right?
Mhm.
And I did have to take out some student loans, but not many. And I really, essentially I'm backing my kids' loans. But there's a lot of options out there for schools that don't cost an arm and a leg. And
Mhm.
that's I would say that's one of the reasons for sitting down with somebody like yourself, is because you're going to be able to sit down and find out about the children and what their goals and objectives are, and help them find a match for the parent's income and for the child's needs.
Yeah, and I would say the big thing that's happening, which I think will be big for mortgage qualifications as well, is that their Department of Education is going to place some sort of cap on how much interest can accrue, because like when you have a mortgage, you're paying your monthly mortgage, and yes, at first most of that money goes towards interest, but over time it starts going towards principal, right? And you pay it down.
Right.
Student loans don't work that way. So this happens all the time. And I think this is one of the biggest myths. And it's an easy way to tick me off, is when people are like, oh, these millennials don't want to pay off their loans. They're so lazy. Right. And I'm like, you don't understand. It doesn't work the same way. And so I just had a client the other day, took out $30,000 for college. This was I don't know, a long time ago. Has paid over $60,000 on her loans. Okay.
Yeah.
Guess how much she still owes? $147,000.
How does that work? Compound interest?
Student loans. That's how they work. It's insane. And so you'll have people paying and paying and paying.
Wait, because she's paying some kind of, I assume she is a him or her, they or them, are, because they're paying less than the actual principal and interest or something like that, or how the loan is structured, pay her $350 a month and she's going backwards.
Yeah, or people pay and all it takes is a recession, and a couple years they couldn't pay, so they were in forbearance and interest was accruing. And I can't even tell you how many times I've seen people, and you look at the original, I was just looking, so my student loans are about to be forgiven because I was on top of this many years ago, hence how I got into this industry. But I just got the statement yesterday from my servicer, and it was going to start at 70,000, and if I paid it off in 10 years, my interest, only the interest, not the principal, the interest was $100,000. So I would have had to pay $197,000 total in 10 years to pay off what was $70,000 in original loans. Insane. Right? It's crazy. And so they're going to cap that so that future generations don't have to deal with it. But that's one of the reasons they're making these adjustments and these kind of auto forgiveness of people with older loans, because most people with older loans actually have more than double paid their loans off. They just keep accruing this interest.
Isn't there a standard interest rate that's kind of capped?
It depends what kind of loan and when you have, but the student loan interest rate is now tied to the federal interest rate. That was supposed to be a temporary fix because at the time interest rates were incredibly low when that was passed. But then when interest rates went up, people's student loan interest rates went up, and that kind of created a problem.
That kind of stuff.
So,
well, this is a tremendously interesting conversation, and it does relate, because there are people who are in a spot where they cannot buy a home because of their student loan debt. And I think it's, like I said, on the front end, if you're heading into college, definitely would reach out to Alicia. If you're, sitting there going, what should I do? Reach out as well. It looks like the sun went down on where you're at.
Probably.
The light just went away. I was like,
I'm not in Mexico anymore. I was in Mexico, and now I'm like, oh, my sun went away. One thing I was going to mention, though, one of the changes they made or going to be making in July is they're going to change one of the payment plans that will be huge, especially for my clients that are like doctors, lawyers. They have large student loans. So they're going to basically cut that in half to make it easy to understand. So If you are like one of my chiropractors I get all the time, and you have a $3,000 a month payment, that will, now we can put you in programs where it's going to be $1,500 a month. And we use that kind of strategy all the time for people who want to buy homes, because now, we do that for a year or two, and now we can save enough to put more of a down payment down, right? And now you can qualify more for a home that you want, or other things, right? Retirement, whatever your financial goals are. But if we can save $1,500 a month or whatever, that's a lot of money to be able to put towards a house.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks. You guys can see the phone number going across the board there, 425-507-9069. Is there any other way they can do some research on you?
Yeah, they can go to www.collegeinsights.com. And you can check out the website, and our email and phone number and stuff is on there. And you can, there's a little form you can even fill out and click the little student loan button and schedule a consultation.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Alicia. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Before we end, I just want to share, we've got coming right along the horizon. It's not next week, but the week after that is the annual Tulip Festival in the Skagit Valley. If you haven't been out to see, it's pretty amazing. It's a celebration of spring. It looks like it's going to be kind of cold this weekend, so the following weekend might be a perfect time to get out, check out the millions of tulips. They also have stuff like, let's see, they've got, I don't know, Rosengard and Tulip Town Gardens are two of them. Oh, it looks like there's going to be a parade, and I don't know when that is, but you can Google Skagit Valley Tulip Festival. Maybe take a tulip run or tulip bike ride. It's really beautiful. So if you haven't checked that out, starts April, goes to the end of April. That is what's happening here in the Northwest. I'm going to bring our people back on. Alicia, thank you so much. Tucker, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. As always, if you need any of these services, you can reach out to the Eastside Real Estate Team. We are here every week, Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. And if you know of anybody who has a fantastic business on the East Side that you would like to share with my little world here, it'd be great. Just reach out to the Eastside Real Estate Team. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.